Good morning. This is Tim Kanak with Perkins Roofing. That's what I love to hear in the morning. Crashing sounds of old tiles being thrown away that are over 20 years old. So what we're doing in this video is I'm going to be showing you how to install a standing seam metal roof. And you can see behind me that we are demoing an old tile roof. And it really matters what the old roof is, what you're demoing. Your costs are going to vary greatly between demoing a shingle roof, a metal roof, or a tile roof. So I'm going to get into that real quick, and then we'll get into the steps and the stages of installing a standing seam metal roof in Florida per high velocity hurricane zone code. Because while we are here in Boca Raton, this is Palm Beach County, this qualifies as Florida building code. Boca has higher standards than most other cities, and the homeowner is from South Florida, so he wants his roof to be high velocity hurricane zone rated. So we are doing this per high velocity hurricane zone, which means the fasteners are going to be 4 inches on center, not 6 inches on center. That means that we're using double XFR under the metal, not just one layer of XFR. We're doing this per the strictest building code in the United States of America. So first things first, when you're demoing a tile roof, you want to make sure that you put tarps down. If there's nice pavers, you want to put plywood down. You have to put breakers on the truck because it's a lot of heavy tile. These concrete tiles this one's actually clay, but these tiles are super, super heavy. So these loads are going to be, you're looking at like 3 loads of this dump truck just to clear off this tile roof, which is 46 squares. That means 4,600 square feet of roofing. And you can see here, we are loading the roofing rolls simultaneously to the roof as we're doing the demo today. Usually I like to get the rolls all loaded the day before we start the roof, but sometimes it works out where we can get a morning delivery, and the morning delivery can occur as we're still tearing off. Right now it's only 9 a.m. You can see we have a ton of the tiles off already on the roof. You can also see that we have left the first row of the tiles on. Now we leave this first row until last because this is going to catch all the other little pieces of tile that are falling down from the roof. So this first row of tile and the gutters, which we're going to be replacing the gutters, so that's trash, we're leaving that to catch stuff like that from falling and getting all in the yard. So that's why you see this first row of tile still on, in case you're wondering, oh, why did they leave that? That's why. That and the gutters are to catch the little pieces of debris and all the crap that's going to fall when you're tearing off the old roofing system. When you see fibering like this of the paper, you know that it's time for a new roof because the paper is starting to deteriorate. All right, so you can see to the side of me, this is all the stuff that I'm talking about, that when you're removing the old roof, that can fall to the ground, which is why you leave this first row to catch this. And you can see we put this sheet of plywood here because this is a 6-on-12 roof, so it is pretty sloped. So we put this plywood here to stop these rolls from falling since we're doing double XFR. You can see this is the wrapping of the XFR, which is a fire and a water barrier. That is an 80 mil paper that is UL listed for fire barrier and water barrier. Clay tiles. Now you can see that in the valleys they had put a mortar set on a portion of the roof, but some of the rest of the roof is fasteners. So you can see that they were screwed in too. So you see all these screws here in the roof. Now we have to remove these screws today before we start ripping off the paper. For the sections that we don't rip the paper off, we have to remove the screws and seal with bull because we don't want these screws to leak. As you can see, each one of these fasteners where the tiles were fastened in can leak. So this was a mechanically fastened clay tile roof, which means that it was only wind rated up to 120 miles an hour at the most, since it's mechanically fastened. If you've watched my other videos, you can see if you use a dual component foam When you're installing your tiles, it can be rated up to 160. If you use single component foam, 110. And these mechanically fastened systems are only rated for 110 or 120 miles per hour of wind. So this new metal roof that we're putting on here is going to be about 200 mile per hour rated. So he's getting about double the wind rating. You had to back the screws out first so that you could pop them up easier. But then you're leaving all these holes behind, which is why when you're demoing and mechanically fastened, you either have to recover it the same day, or you have to seal all the holes with roof cement. Otherwise, all these screw holes are going to be little leaks all over the roof. So I had mentioned that when you demo a tile roof, it's more expensive than when you're demoing a shingle roof. The reason being is you can see we have not even started removing paper yet. So when you're just taking the tiles off and removing the tiles, you're wasting at least half a day, if not a full day, of just removing the tiles. So we're getting rid of all of this. It takes longer. So at least one day, at least half of a day, if not a full day, on most residential houses, just to remove the tiles extra. So more time means more money, because time is money and we're paying labor. Now on top of it, we're going to fill on this house 3 of these dump trucks of tiles. Each of these dump trucks fits about 17 to 20 squares of straight tile per load into the truck. This is a 46 square house, so that means we're going to be looking at like 2.5 dump trucks. A half dump truck, it doesn't really matter. Now when they do the dump, it will change the weight, but each of these trucks to dump is going to cost me anywhere from around $800 or $900 to $1,200 per truck. If this was a shingle roof, we would be able to fit all 46 squares of shingles into one truck, and the dump on a shingle, because of the weight, is only a few $100. So you're looking at a price difference just in dumping. For this house, it's going to be about $3,000 just in dumping the tile. And if this was shingles, just dumping the shingles would cost maybe $400. So big difference in hauling and removing the waste when you're getting rid of a tile roof. When you combine the pricing of the weight and the dumps of the tiles and how much room they take up versus a shingle roof or maybe even a metal roof, it's less room. It's more labor intensive to remove the metal roof. You can see here behind me, getting rid of these tiles. We're doing it pretty quick here. We have a decent amount of people on this project right now to get rid of these, but we're still going to be spending half of a day at least just getting rid of all of the tile before we can start taking the paper off, plus the dump truck, the 3 dump trucks that we're paying for that you wouldn't be paying for otherwise if this was a shingle roof. So if you have a tile roof and you're wondering, your neighbor had a shingle roof and you're both getting a metal roof and you're wondering, why is my price more than theirs? This is why. The dumping of the tiles is expensive. Removing the tiles is more expensive than removing shingle. And then removing metal is also more expensive than removing shingle, just because of the labor intensity, even though you could probably fit a whole 46 square metal roof into that truck there. So you can see here's the old Altusa Venezuela tiles. Super popular, especially in like Coral Gables or Boca. These were really popular back in the day. Now if you want these, because they're discontinued, Varela makes a Caribbean that looks exactly like this, the Varela Caribbean tile. They make it in 3 colors, red, fume, and brown. I have some clients who want that right now. You can see that there's no ridge metal here. So all they did was mortar in the hip and ridge tiles. So this again is Boca. Was not Miami-Dade code, so they didn't use ridge metals, which is dumb, because all these hip and ridge caps will pop right off if this is the only thing holding into place. This will crack out after like 10 years. This pointing of mortar on the hips, ridges, rakes, you have to touch this up. If you don't touch this up every, 8 to 12 years, somewhere in that range, then it just falls apart like this, and then the tiles are gonna be loose on the top of your roof. Now here you can see the screws. These screws are all rusted that we're backing out. Do you think that's waterproof? All it takes is for water to go through rusting screws if these are completely rusted, and they'll leak straight down that hole, and you'll get leaks in every single one of those. That's why I really recommend a dual component foam when you're putting on a tile roof. I know this is a metal roof video, but I just want to show you what you run into on tile roofs and why I think mechanically fastening tile roofs is really dumb, and so is using a single component foam because it's only rated for 110 miles an hour when you can use dual component for much higher wind ratings. So this right here is a whirly bird, or the technical term would be a turbine vent. They're pretty old school. We don't really install these much anymore. Now we can. The general cost to install is usually around $250, $350 to install one of these. You can see it turns from the wind. The wind hits it and it makes it turn. A more efficient vent now is going to be a solar roof vent. We're in Florida, where you see not a cloud in the sky today. Even though it's cool out, still not a cloud in the sky. So very good for solar and for sun. So a solar vent is going to be much more efficient than this, and they also look a lot more modern. You've probably seen them on the other roofs that we've done, but I'll show you when we come back on this roof and we're installing the standing seam panels, how we're gonna box in our solar vent, because we're gonna curb mount it. Like right here, this turbine is currently self-flashed into the roof. That means that the flashing actually hits the roof deck. When we curb mount, we're gonna be building a 2x4 curb for a solar vent and putting that solar vent on it. So that's what we're gonna be doing when we have the solar vent versus these turbines here. The solar vent is much more efficient than the turbine. So we're not doing the flat roof, but we found a roof leak right here. You can see this wood right here is soft. It's likely stemming from right here at this tile transition into the roof. So we're gonna have to repair this now while we're here in the flat roof, because we are doing a silicone coating only on the flat roof. Since this flat roof is only 5 years old, he did not want to fully re-roof it, so we're just going to do a silicone coating and transition it into the metal roof. You're going to see when we put our metal roof, we're going to have transition plates here, because if you don't put the transition plates and you don't sandwich it properly, then you're going to get leaks in between the two roofs. And if you have a leak in the flat roof here that's coming from up here, you're going to have to remove panels to get it, and that's very expensive to do metal roof repairs. When you put a standing seam roof, you want it to be done forever. You don't want to mess with it again. So you have to make sure you do it the right way from the beginning, which a lot of people don't. That's why it's very important to make sure you watch my videos and hire a good contractor like me who knows what they're doing, instead of just hiring some dum-dum who's going to throw up the cheapest roof for you and not think of these things. We have another video where we had a chimney just like this on another metal roof that we did. So I already know what we're running into here. You can see that a chimney like this that has all these stones is super porous, because water is going to come in through all these stone cracks. And he already has told me, the owner, that he's had multiple leaks through this chimney. So as a part of our project, we're going to demo this chimney tomorrow. We're going to start demoing the chimney, removing the stone. Once we remove the stone, we're going to have, this is plywood behind here. There's going to be plywood with a waterproofing paper. And my hand's actually wet touching this. There's this moisture just soaked in through the stone. So there's going to be plywood and paper and wire mesh, likely, with, I don't know, mortar patties or something holding the stone up. I don't know if it's foam or mortar. We'll see when we start demoing it. But what we're going to do when we come back is we're going to rebuild it structurally. So we're going to put all new plywood. Hopefully we don't have to change any of the 2x4s or 2x6s that actually build the structure, but only the plywood sheathing. Then we're going to install SAV, Polyglass SAV, as a vertical waterproofing on the walls right here. Wire mesh over it and re-stucco this to make it a modern stucco finish instead of this old stony look that is going to absorb a ton of water and you can't paint it. So that's actually great, because then the stucco, all you have to do is paint it to match the house. We're going to actually put PB70 on it and do a waterproofing on it. That's going to help the stucco last super long. So we're going to do a waterproofing on it, and then he'll be able to paint this chimney whatever color he wants to match the home, because I know he's going to be painting the house once the roof is completed. So we'll get this all painted up after, and this is going to be a lot better than eventually failing, because you can actually see on the house next door behind me, they have a standing seam metal roof and dark bronze, but you can see that the chimney has the same issue. I guarantee sometime in the next few years this chimney is going to leak, and they're going to have to be paying a lot of money for someone to come take up panels and do repairs around the chimney, when they should have just restored the chimney simultaneously as you're doing the roof. The issue is a lot of roofers don't know how to do chimney work. We do. We're a general contractor too, so we do this stuff all the time. I've been doing chimneys for 10 years, so I know what we're getting into with something like this, and we're going to be building a custom cap for this chimney too. So we're going to fabricate a custom cap piece for this chimney, a brand new one, to go on top, so that we don't have issues of leaks like they're probably going to have in a few years next door. See right here, the gutter installer spiked these straight through the drip metal, the gutters. The drip metal needs to be changed as part of the roof. So when this happens, you have to remove the gutter as part of the roof. You don't have a choice. And you're also more prone to leaks, because you see there's no caulking on these spikes here. So you're prone that water, if it dumps backward, if it rains sideways in here and hits those spikes, it can run through and infiltrate the fascia. There's a lot of bad fascia on the house, and my guess would be because these are spiked with no caulking. All right, so it is day 2 of the project. You can see behind me that we have exposed the plywood. You can see behind, we are demoing the paper from the roof. And again, as I mentioned yesterday, we have left the tiles on the perimeter during the demo process. You can see here, we have now removed the tiles on the perimeter because we have demoed the paper. But here, where we are still demoing the paper, we left the tile to catch the small debris so it doesn't fall in the yard. You can see we've also put tarps here on the bushes to help protect the plants from stuff falling off the roof, nails, tin caps, all the great stuff that you find, you know, old tar that is solidified, all that good stuff. We put that to cover the plants to make sure stuff doesn't get stuck in there. And then again, this is to trap all the stuff that can fall, and that's also why we leave the old gutters until the completion of the demo. We will be removing these gutters soon because the gutters are installed through the drip metal. They're spiked through the drip metal, as I mentioned in the video yesterday. You can see we have a nice leak right here, a giant hole. These little spots here where you have a rake that comes into an eave are a very standard leak. You see this giant hole straight through the roof and the fascia. That's one of the more standard leaks you're gonna find. Those spots, and then also valleys, are very prone to leaking in pretty much any roof. No. This is the spot I was showing you from below. You can see that this plywood is decked over these 2x4s. So this tells me that in the past, before the tile roof was put on, this may have been a cedar shake roof. So this is probably the 3rd roof for this home. It is a little bit older, because they obviously, last time they re-roofed this, you had 2x4 decking, which is weird because usually you have 1x6s or 1x8s, but they have these 2x4s run, and then they re-sheathe over it with the plywood. But you can see right here, it's pretty nastily torn up here, right where this rake hits the eave, and that fascia is all rotted. So this is why it's important also to remove the gutters, because when you remove the gutters, I mean, obviously anyone would have seen that anyway, but when you remove the gutters, you'll find other rot on these fascias. And you can see also one of the things on the fascia, just like if you look at my the shingle roof video that we had just done, you can see there's 2 fascias. You have an inside fascia and an outside fascia. So there's an interior siding fascia which is structural, and then an exterior fascia, which is aesthetic, not structural. That's, you know, to protect the outside, and that's the one that gets painted. And you're not gonna find the rots if you don't knock test those and the gutters stay up. So important to knock test. The only reason you would open this up is because the plywood is rotted. You see we're not opening the plywood up on the other eaves because there's no rot. You only do that when you find rot. That's why you knock test. So you can see we've already done 6 different plywoods. It's not 9, I'm upside down right now. So this is plywood number 6 on the roof. And this is the Polyglass XFR. We are doing a double layer of XFR on this roof. The XFR is an 80 mil self-adhered underlayment. You can see the self-adhered pulled off here. And the guys are installing it now. So you can see here these overlaps. We're overlapping half and half because this is a double XFR install. This home is in Boca, but the client wants everything to be done by high velocity hurricane zone code. So when we're doubling here, you're getting the second half underneath, and you start with a half roll. So we're getting double XFR right here by overlapping half the sheet over half the sheet. And it's back nailed just like the TU Plus and just like the MTS. And you can see here that these rolls have the self-adhered just like the MTS and the TU Plus. The only difference is this is 80 mils thick rather than 60 mils thick, and this is also a fire barrier besides a water barrier. So this has a Class A UL listing, not just a water barrier listing. So fire and water barrier on the XFR. The other difference, because it is an 80 mil roll, these rolls by standard will do 2 squares, but the XFR rolls only do 1.5 squares each on a standard install. Since we're doing double roll here, you're only going to get 0.75 squares per roll, so not even 1 square roll when you're doing the double envelopment like we are right here. So they are a 1.5 square roll, so if you're installing the XFR, you have to keep that in mind, that you're not going to get the same spread on MTS as you do with XFR. The XFR is going to run short. So you can see here, circle the V. That's not V for Vendetta, that's V for Vent. So we know where the old vent was and that there's a hole there. Don't step there unless you want your foot falling through. So once our vent comes, we're going to cut the paper and put the vents in with the metal. But you have to mark your vent locations on the roof. Otherwise, someone will walk right through and put a hole, or you'll just cover right over it and completely forget about the vent. So the chimney, you can see the concrete block is actually made of concrete, now wood, as we had originally assumed based on most of these. Most of these chimneys are actually made out of wood, not concrete, which concrete is better. So it's a good thing. But what we have to do now, instead of rebuilding wood, which we assumed we were going to have to be changing out wood because they have leaks here, we're going to smooth out this concrete here, use our blue primer on the concrete, and do a new, fresh base coat of stucco, and then a finish coat of stucco, and then paint it with the PB70. On the cap here, we're going to build the cap smooth out of 2x6s, so that we can put our new aluminum cap on the top of the chimney. It's going to be a white aluminum cap. So you'll see that what we're going to do now that we have this surface, all the stone is gone, we're going to smooth this out with grinders, hand grind it, smooth it out, prime it, base coat of stucco, finish coat of stucco, waterproof with the waterproofing, and you can paint on top of the PB70 waterproofing because that is a gloss white color. You can paint any color on top of it, so that when he paints the house, because after the roof is done, they're going to be painting the house, they'll be able to match the chimney to the rest of the house. So we are on day 4 of the project right now. Day 3, what we did was we changed out the bad fascia around the home. I was not here, because this is all the way down in Boca, so I did not come to get video of the fascia being changed. But you can see we have new fascia here, and the homeowner actually painted it himself instead of having us do it. He wanted to save some money, so he painted the fascia himself after we installed new fascias around the house. So we have the new fascia now done around the house. The chimney's complete, so we're going to go up and look at the stucco on the chimney. And we ran into an issue on the flat roof, so I'll jump up there and talk about the flat roof real quick. But you do see the metal has been delivered in front of us. So when we order from Gulf Coast Supply, they are pre-cutting the panels based on the dimensions of the home. So we provide them the dimensions of the home. They have an AutoCAD. They cut the panels a little bit long. They deliver them into the driveway. And we set up a cutting stand here, a cutting table, so that we can bend and cut the panels as needed to bring up to the roof. And you could see one of the issues, though, with this delivery is that they stacked all these panels. So what if we need the panels on the bottom? Now we've got to move all this, and this is insanely heavy, like hundreds and hundreds of pounds. So one thing I'm going to have to talk to Gulf Coast about this is please do not stack deliveries like this, because if I need panels down here, how am I going to get to it with just people? I don't have a forklift here on site. So anyway, this is what happens sometimes with the deliveries, but this is what your normal setup when you're getting a metal roof done is going to look like. You're going to have your panels here, unless you have a machine on site and they're spitting them out on site. So these are all pre-cut. We're going to cut them, move them up to the roof. They're not getting roof delivered like roof tiles. We just deliver the panels to the ground. So we need enough driveway space in order to have those delivered. Now let's look at the panels. You can see how the panels come. They come like tucked in together with only the bottom parts of the panels exposed. You can actually see the striations in the panel right here. So here are the striations so that we don't have oil canning on the back side of the panels. And you can see that the measurements are also on the back side of the panel, so we know exactly what size each piece is. So you see here 10 foot 6 inches Gulf Coast, 9 foot 2 inches Gulf Coast. So and then it shows Miami-Dade approved on the panel. So you can see the back of the striations. Now here is the panel color itself. It's going to look beautiful when it's on. This is Napa Champaign. This is probably my favorite color. I think it looks amazing when it's on. And you can see the striations on the front side of the panel to reduce the effects of oil canning. So that's what the panels look like when they're stored. You can see that they're in little pallets with straps. You see the marks on the back side of the panel, so you know all your sizes. Like here's our 13-foot panels. And then you see here this side. And we have our cut list, so we know exactly where this panel goes. We know exactly where this panel goes based on the cut list. So basically, we have a map of the roof that shows us exactly where each size of panel is going to be laid out on the roof. So that's kind of like what your deliveries look like when you're getting your metal panels delivered for your home. You can see down here we have our ridge cap pieces. So here's our ridge caps, and these are all bent depending on the slope of the home. So you have to make sure that you have the correct pitch of the house to get everything bent correctly to match the pitch of the house. So you see here that we have our ridge metals. We have right here all of our accent pieces. So you see our bullnose drip metal right here. This is what I mentioned before, is that on a metal roof, we're going to get a bullnose drip metal instead of a regular drip metal. Regular drip metal is just going to come straight, but this bullnose pokes out from the front. So there's your bullnose drip metal. And here's your color. So that's the color Napa Champaign that we're going to have on this roof. Okay, so you see right here, we have our bullnose drip metal, our Napa Champaign color. You can see on a metal roof, you're always going to have this little piece on the top of the drip metal that pokes out. That's called your bullnose. So one thing about the panel delivery is that the panels all come with plastic installed, and you have to spend some time removing the plastic on the panels. You see the plastic on there. So you have to take the detail pieces and remove the plastic, especially on the drip metals, because those are going to go on first. And you can see it's really smart if you're installing metal to use a wrist guard like he has on, so you don't cut your wrist open, because all these panels are sharp. So even if you've been working with them for a long time, it's pretty easy to cut yourself when you're picking panels up, because when you're trying to work fast and work hard, You know, you're working all day, you get a little careless, so it's smart to wear a wrist guard like that. I've cut myself a number of times, cut holes in my pants a number of times, hopefully not in the wrong areas. So, look at this beauty behind me with the stucco complete. We still need to put a metal cap on. You can see we have a piece of plywood here because remember, this is a chimney. It's still open underneath. So we still have to put the cap on top, and we still have to waterproof this with the PB70 waterproofing. So next time you see this chimney, it's going to be bright gloss white. And then we had to cut the stucco here because this is where the metal roof is going to flash up into the chimney. And so we're going to put that straight into the block right there. So we're going to be cutting right there on the bottom on purpose. That's why this is not just unfinished by accident. That is where the metal is going to go. And you can actually see here's the blue primer from when we did this stucco pre-cut. So here's the blue primer. And here's our completed chimney. Check that out. You remember earlier in the video when I told you there's a roof leak right here? You see these transitions here are always leak problems if they're not done correctly. If you don't transition the paper, and a lot of roofers are going to make this mistake, if you don't sandwich the paper between the two roofs, the slope roof and the flat roof, you end up with something like this. So one of the things that we discovered while we were opening this area up for roof repair is that this flat roof has some insulation, and you can see, and look, you can see the tin caps are rusted. 5-year-old roof. Great job, old roofer. But look at this insulation. It's powder. There's been so much water coming through into the roof now that this insulation is not even board anymore. It's just completely turned into dust. So that means this whole flat roof, we are going to save it and coat it. It's probably gonna have to just be redone. So we have a meeting now with the owner to discuss that. Because if it's powder all over here, that means it's probably all powder all over the place because they never properly sandwiched their transitions between tile roof and flat roof, which means that when they did this flat roof, they did not remove the tiles 2 rows and tie everything in, which is what I recommend. And that's why after 5 years, this flat roof has already failed. So this is what happens when you cut corners, people. This is why you hire good contractors, not the cheap contractors, because cheap contractors will do whatever you want. But a good contractor is going to tell you need to sandwich this, and it's going to cost more to do that. But if you're going to be doing your roofs at different times, that's what you need to do. That's why I always recommend, if you have multiple types of roof deck, a flat and a sloped, do them simultaneously. Do not do the flat roof at one time and then the tile roof at another time. Do them all at the same time, because then you run into stuff like this. Since this roof is tapered from this side to the front, we have to open a core in the high area. When you have a tapered system, you need to always core the low area and the high area to find out how thick your insulation actually is. And you can see just this core test, again, it's just dust, it's insulation. So that means that water has been coming into this roof probably since it was first laid. That's dust. This is the insulation board. So right here, you can see behind me, our bullnose drip metal installed. Nice and flush against the fascia here. Bent to match the fascia and the slope of the roof, which is important because a lot of your standard drip metals, if you're doing a tile or a shingle roof, you can just bend it to match the slope as you're installing it. But this bullnose, since it has the point on the end, the point needs to match the slope of the roof. Otherwise, it's gonna look all wonky. So you have to make sure that you have the pitch correct. When you need the exact pitch of the roof and the fascia in order to make sure your bullnose drip metal comes off perfectly and is not all wonky. So you can see right here, this extra lip. This is the bull nose of the drip metal, what we call the bull nose. And this protrudes approximately 1/2 inch from the roof level. So basically the panels are gonna use this bull nose, they're gonna grab onto it. And that's what's going to create a firm system. And then you can see we're not using regular nails like we do on drip metal on our panels here. We're using the screws in the drip metal. So our bullnose drip metal is going to be screwed in with these pancake screws rather than us using nails like we do on a regular drip metal if we're doing a tile or a shingle roof. All right, so you can see on day 5, which it's day 5 now, you can see that we have sealed in the flat roof, brand new tapered insulation that is not dust, with an SAV base layer down. And then right here, the chimney has been painted with the PV70 to waterproof it. So it's a waterproof paint on the chimney. It's still gonna get painted to match the rest of the color of the house eventually. And so we have sealed in the flat roof, which we finished in day 4. We cannot complete the cap sheet on this flat roof until we receive some extra drip metal pieces. So we have our bullnose drip here that we ordered for the metal roof, but since we thought we were coating this, we did not order enough pieces for the drip metal of the flat roof to match the eave of the entire home. So we're waiting on those pieces to come in, which is supposed to come tomorrow, day 6. Before we install the cap sheet on the flat roof. And I'm not going to list the steps of the flat roof install because this is not the purpose of this video. We're talking about metal roofing only. And I didn't know that we were going to end up doing this flat roof when we first started this project. But it does go to show you that this stuff that you see on HGTV where they run into problems mysteriously on every job, it actually does happen in real life. So if you're a budgeting project, it's good to keep a little bit of a cushion just in case you run into stuff like a 5-year-old flat roof that the old roofer, that wasn't me, did a terrible job on that we have to come now and fix, unfortunately. And there's really no way around that because you saw that the insulation was powder because they didn't transition things correctly. So this is why I recommend keeping a cushion for homeowners on a job, because you never know when you run into this. We have a plan coming in, okay, we're gonna save this roof, we're gonna silicone coat it, and then you know what they say about plans and roofing? Yeah. So the chimney is now waterproof. We're just waiting on the cap to finish the chimney. We're gonna have transition plates here when we transition in the metal roof to the flat roof. And in the meantime, we're installing standing seam panels right now. We're installing valley pieces in the roof, and we've installed our drip metals. Let's take a look at what that stuff looks like.
Que el día que queda la mitad lo que sube él.
Okay. See, that's how your piece is going to bend. This is what's going to come around the bullnose. So the bullnose, when this turn around, is going to come right here, And this is going to be bent back around that bullnose drip metal on the panel there. And this stuff ain't easy to cut. It takes practice. You gotta have some strong wrists and some strong forearms to do this. So Monsieur Rafa here takes a lot of working out. So these are detail panels now, so you can see it's a shorter panel. Is going to be put into a very short detail, and it's going to match the angle. So you have to get the right angle on it and move it into the appropriate spot. So I'm going to show you what the end of the valley looks like. And just so you know, the homeowner's not home, so they don't care about the music. If you're like, these guys are really blasting music right now. But you can see, this is what your valley end is gonna look like. The valley is going to peek out a little bit past the bullnose. So it's gonna come and clip back onto the bullnose. So you can see how the valley then is cut and grabs too and wraps around. You see how that's notched where this valley piece was cut long, tabbed, and bent back down onto the other side of the bullnose drip. So that's the purpose of the bullnose, that it sticks out so that your panels, you can wrap around the bullnose and grab to it. Check that out. It's pretty cool, huh? So that's what all of your details are going to look like, and all your panels are going to grab. So our next panels, you have to put your valleys down first. When you're doing your metal roof, you have to put your eave metals and your perimeter metals down first. Then you're gonna put all your valley metals down next. After that, we're gonna install our field panels. After the field panels, your rake details, since we're doing box rakes, not drip metal rakes, they're gonna go on top of the field panels. If you're doing your other type of rake, where it's a drip metal type rake, which is a flat finish instead of a boxy finish, which I'll show you the difference once we get our boxy ones on there. If you do the drip metal finish, you're gonna put those down first before you put your flat panels. But if you're doing your box finish, you're gonna put those down first. So we have here our valleys, which go down post drip metal. So we have our bullnose drip, then our valleys come next, then our field panels. And then our ridge panels are gonna go at the end. The Z metals, wall flashings, and ridge panels all go last. So you see here that you have overlaps. You want all of your seams to run down slope. So all of your seams and your overlaps in any roofing system should always run down slope. Just like with the XFR here, all the seams run down slope. Same thing with your valley metal seams, because your valley metal pieces are not going to run the full length. They come in 10-foot pieces. Your panels are going to be pre-cut to the dimensions that you need, but not the valley metals. So your valley metal seams are still going to all run down slope. So you can see this is what our valley metal panels look like on a metal roof. For now, they have only been tacked down. So you might say, hey, look at the spacing on these screws, Tim. That doesn't look like high velocity hurricane zone code to me. But all we've done now is tack them down in the appropriate spot, because we're gonna come back and we're gonna be installing Z-bars on these panels later for the panels to clip into. So we'll show you what that looks like. And when you see all this stuff here, you're like, whoa, those panels look messed up. That's the plastic. So when you order the metal, they all come with plastics on them, and you have to peel the plastics off. Now on the termination metals, we'll peel the plastics off before we install them. But on the panels that we're installing right now, we're leaving the plastic on to protect the panels until the very end of the project. Unless it's like baking outside, like today you see it's cloudy and we're only in March, so it's actually kind of cool. It's like 80 degrees or 70, high 70s or whatever, so it's not gonna melt to the metal. But if it's 100 degrees in the middle of the summer, the plastic will melt to the metal, so you have to be a little more careful about peeling the plastic at an appropriate time. And you can see we have a nose joint here on our valley metal. So on a shingle or a tile roof, it's gonna be a straight piece of valley metal that comes across here. But when we are installing in a valley on a metal roof, we have this V joint and everything is gonna be clipped in. We're also gonna be creating a custom saddle right here around this chimney. And that's something that requires a sheet. So we had to order a 4x10 sheet of this color metal to flash this in correctly on the chimney saddle. And then again, we also had to custom order the transition plates. I've talked about it in a number of videos before, but a lot of roofers will not order the transition plates on a metal roof when you're transitioning into a flat roof. That will cause failure and turn into leaks, and you don't want that on a metal roof, because if you are having a leak at a transition, you're going to be taking all these panels up to fix that at some point. So you can see screws every 4 inches to meet high velocity hurricane zone. Florida building code is only every 6 inches, not every 4 inches. Right here you can see the clip is screwed down. And now what's going to happen when we put our field panels like over there, the field panels, just like at the end of the valley, are going to be bent to tab over and come under the clip, and they're going to clip to the valley. So this clip here that's white, you're not going to see that on the finished roof. The next panel is going to come over and clip under the whole clip, which is going to be installed all the way down on both sides of the valley. And both panels on this side or on this side are going to run and hook to the clip, which is why you saw my guys down here cutting. So you see up here, we're zipping this in, prepping the valleys. These guys are here bending and installing panels. So they're getting the panels installed, screwed down, and bending the seam. And you see all the panels sitting on the side here. They've already been pre-prepped by our crew down here. Where you see our metal masters. They take the panel, the next panel on their chart. See, they've got their cut chart. And then they're going to tab everything as necessary so that the guys up here can keep installing. So that we can keep installing up here our details. And so that they can install the field panels on the backside over there. So it's a well-oiled machine. You need a pretty big crew for metal to keep things moving. So you need your team down here cutting. You see, cutting the panel on the bench to get it appropriate. So you have your ground team, and these are the guys that are going to make sure all your cuts are perfect on the panels. Because if they make one wrong cut, that's an expensive waste of material right there. These panels ain't cheap. So they prep the panels, bring them to the right spots. Then up here you see our team marking details, getting our details ready to go on the valleys. And then over here, we're installing our field panels. So it takes a lot of effort when you're doing a standing seam metal roof. And to do it quickly, you need a very well-oiled machine, like you see right here. So you can see all the clips on this roof because the homeowner is paying us extra to do this for high velocity hurricane zone. So that means that our spacing on the clips is going to be more than what you usually do on Florida building code. You see the spacing? This is for high velocity hurricane zone. And this is what's gonna hold these panels down to the roof. So basically on these hand crimped panels, These are the hand crimped panels. You're going to put your screws and clips all the way down at the spacing required, whether you're doing Florida building code or high velocity hurricane zone. They're going to grab onto the panel on this side. And then what you're going to do when you put the next panel is you're going to put it over the clip. And you see this is just holding everything intact as this one's being screwed down so there's no movement. So these clips here don't stay. This is just to hold everything in place while we're screwing this side down. And you tack in the top here. Now, you say, oh, Tim, this is supposed to be hidden fasteners. Why do you have fasteners on the top? These are tack down fasteners. On the ridge here, we're gonna have Z-bars that are installed and a ridge piece that's gonna come over all of this anyway. And if you're doing a ridge vent on a metal roof, you're going to cut a hole right here, just like you would on a shingle roof. And you're gonna have perforated ridge vents on the end. But obviously we're not doing ridge vents, otherwise this paper would have cuts in it and we would be putting the ridge vent on. And we would have to move these panels down a little bit to make room to do that. So you can see that these are set now, but they have not been bent. So all the panels are set in place, but we still have to come back to hand bend these now down so that they're interlocked. And when you interlock a hand crimped standing seam roof, you can do it with a 90-degree angle, or you can do it with a 180-degree angle. The 180 or double lock system is going to achieve a higher wind pressure than the 90-degree, which is a single lock system. Now, a single lock system is more standard, and when I say 90 degrees, you're gonna have a final 90-degree bend. I'll show you what that looks like when we do the paper, when we do the actual bends. Now, a 180, you're gonna just have a straight line. You're not gonna see a tab sticking out. It's just gonna be straight up and down. So it's gonna be bent all the way back. And to do that, that requires a machine. So we have to rent a machine in order to get that final bend on the seam to do a double lock or 180-degree system. You see the sealant now? That's gonna go right on top.
No, tijeras no, porque te sigue dejando el güey la lapa.
So you seal that top right there as you sit it right on top.
¿Va a poner así? Sí. Levántalo para arriba. Jálale.
And then they're gonna start putting the screws now on this side.
Siempre párate tú del lado de allá. Álzalo arriba para que él ponga la cicla, para que no se le... No le dobles en la esa. Nada más le pones sus ciclas normales y no cortan a la entra uno, ¿no?
Uno. Porque el vale entra más para acá.
So you can see right here, the panels are tabbed, and those tabs are gonna bend inward like that as we complete. So you leave the tabs open until you put the next panel, and then you're gonna bend it in once the panels have been bent. And just like with the valley metal, on the edge, these panels are gonna come all and bend underneath the bullnose drip. I'll show you from the bottom what that looks like. So now, from the ground, you can see the end of the panel, right here, it is bent down, and then eventually it's going to be bent tight around the bullnose. So right here, this one here is tight. These two panels have already been bent down tight around the bullnose. Whereas these ones still need to be all bent around. But that's why on a metal roof you're going to have a bullnose, so that you can bend around it, and that's going to hold the panels in place. So you can see before it's crimped, even though it's caulked, you see the caulk in there, it's still going to be open, but once you crimp it, it closes this, and this is what we're talking at a 90-degree angle. That's a 90-degree angle right here. You're fitting an L basically. If you do 180, you're bending this tab down too, which requires, because there's already two pieces of metal here. Since there's two pieces of metal, you cannot do that by hand. You need a machine to bend that back down to a 180. That's what closes this seam here, and this is what gives it the wind resistance, is this hand crimp. So this is hand bent together. And you see some of the caulking coming out between the seam. That's okay, that can be cleaned off. That just means that he's a strong dude and he's getting it really tight together. You can see how tight this end is here if my camera will focus. So this is crimped so tight now that the only way that this is coming apart is if you cut this. So you need 10 snips and you can cut it all the way down, or a mechanical tool to cut that seam, and that's the only way these panels are coming apart now. So if you ever had to repair this for whatever reason, then you would have to cut these panels apart, which that's why metal roof repairs are so expensive, because on a standing seam roof you can't just zip the screws out. You got to cut the seams, and those panels are trash, and now you're buying new seams. If you have a 5E panel, you can just zip the screws right out. But the screws on a 5E panel are also going to deteriorate no matter what in about 25 years or less, because the washers are neoprene, they're rubber, they're going to deteriorate. So you're going to come back and do a lot of maintenance on a exposed fastener roof, whereas the standing seam roof, you should never have to do any maintenance as long as you have good installers and they do it the right way. So this is your 90-degree bend. And see, we got to slide this little small panel in right here. These are the little PIA pieces of the roof. And this is where people fail and where they have problems on a metal roof, is if you don't do the details correctly.
Y luego, homie, mira, esta onda va a ser así. Vamos a medirla aquí. 3 metros.
Okay.
Marquémosle 10 y medio, güey.
¿Cuánto? 10 y medio.
10 y medio. Aquí para arriba. Ahora escuadremos la iglesia.
This is wider than one panel.
Sí, nada más era uno, güey. Híjole, mano. Nada más uno. Pásamelo y ya nada más. Nada más dile que ya, ¿no? Sí, nada más uno. Yo quería poner doble.
Es con él la que no es traerle.
Ok. ¿Y allá para acá cuál es?
Espérame.
Son como 6, 7, ¿no?
So you see, here's the rake, basically, and the rake comes straight in, of the gable comes straight in to this piece. So it has to be cut here for the joint, one little piece, and then the main panel on the end, where the valley comes. See, the valley is going to get extended straight to here, where the red line is. Then we need the little baby pieces there, at the end of the valley.
No. Es del güey.
Entonces le demos presión.
No, pero va a querer que le quitemos esta ceja, ¿no?
La pata.
Esta ceja, ¿no?
No es cierto.
Miguel, pero espérate.
Oh,
Quiero buscar, man.
yeah, with your fingers.
Aquí así, no, corta el de así, ¿no?
Como en angulito, ¿no? Ahora le mochamos entera.
Por eso te digo, así, de este lado, ¿no? Echarle así. No, muy bien.
Mejor de este lado, ¿verdad? Que ya no tienes tus dedos abajo, güey.
No, ya no.
Si quieres pon tu pie. Pon tu pie, ándale.
Ay, güey.
Pega ahí. No, si quieres tú pon la presión y yo le jalo. Espérate.
Okay,
¿Cómo ves, carnal?
what you getting?
Pero aquí lleva flash y la va atrás de la...
So once this panel fits in here, there's going to be one small panel
La
here.
dirección del drip es, ¿no, güey?
The valley is going to feed into it, and then we have to run our rake piece on here. So there's going to be like 4 layers of metal into this area. And all these areas on this roof were leaking before, very common leak point. Tile and shingle roofs, like pretty much anytime you run into these rake transitions into a valley, or you call them a return, like a gable return, these things
No, tiene
always
como 1 y
leak
media.
over time. So it's been a day since I've been here. That means today is day 7 of the project. You can see behind me, we actually have our drip metals now for the flat roof. So we'll take a look at that. You can see more panels have been completed in the meantime, in the last day. So let's take a look at some of these details right now. All right, so we are on the front area of the house on this dual valley, and you can see here's our clip metal installed on this side of the valley, and then on the other side of the valley we also have our clip metal, but our panels are installed. So you can see how the panels are going to wrap around. They get tabbed and bent around the clips, so you cannot see the clip metal at all, except right here because we have not put that piece yet on this ridge cap or on these hips or the Z-bars, because the Z-bars are going to be installed right here on the tops of the panels for the hips and ridges to clip onto. So you can see that the panels have now been clipped on this side and then not on this side. So I think this is a pretty cool visual for you, so you can see this is unfinished and then this is finished, how the panels wrap around. And the hips and ridges are going to be the last panels installed on the entire roof with our Z-bars. So this is the last piece installed once our field panels are in. So this gives you a pretty good view of what it looks like from the top. And you can see too that this color, this Napa Champaign color, changes a lot depending on if it's shady or sunny outside. And you can see here on the seams, they're bent at their 90 degrees. They've been crimped, and how the tabs fold back down the seam. So all your tabs should come back and fold down the seam. So now we're on the other side, and you can see right here we have our dual valleys completed up until right where I'm sitting. So you see our clip metal right here for the panels to bend under, and then you can see the panels on either side are completed all the way up this valley, just so you can see what this detail looks like. So these panels are installed the same way that we showed you earlier in the video. It's just that instead of tabbing and wrapping around the bullnose drip metal, we are cutting the panels diagonally down the valley metal, and they're going to bend and clip around the valley clip instead of the bullnose drip. So it just depends on, okay, am I bending around bullnose drip on a flat finish like we're going to be doing here on this eave? Say hi to young Thomas down there, roofer in training. And then here you can see we're cutting, we don't have a flat angle. The panel is not finishing flush against the drip metal. It's finishing at an angle around the valley, and then the end of the panel, instead of getting bent around the bullnose of that drip metal, it's getting bent around this valley clip here. So that's what that finish looks like. You can see here an example of the pipe boots sticking through. We're gonna still be putting a pipe jack over that. And the panel's completed on this roof. You can see right here, we are putting our valley metal in on our transition between the sloped roof and the flat roof. And we're also going to be putting a transition plate in those areas. So let's go down and take a look at that. So you can see this rake right here that right now we have our bullnose drip wrapped around, and coming down into the return, we had to cut this piece right here to finish against the wall flashing. And then the bullnose is going to come over that to layer the metal in now into the flat roof. And as noted when I was here last time, we put the bullnose drip on the flat roof. Usually we don't have this finish on a flat roof. We're just gonna have a standard flat 3x3 drip metal. But here we're putting our bullnose so that the drip metal on the new flat roof is going to match the drip on the metal roof. Otherwise we would have had two different types and two different colors of metal, and it would have looked weird. So another benefit again of doing the flat roof and the sloped roof at the same time. As you can see, this transition here along the wall, and then the valley metals here, we're going to be putting the cap sheet in a transition plate to finish, so we will see what that looks like by the end of the video. So you can see right here, you probably remember when I was here the other day, we were working on getting these panels right here installed, and now you can see the flashing on the headlamp right here. That's a headlamp flashing against the wall of the rake, as this valley metal is now going to slide over those panels. So you see the valley metals here, our valley clip here, our panels and our clips right here for the field that terminate right on the drip. And I'm going to come down so you can get an angle from down there of what it looks like when you have your headlamp wall return into the rake. So while they're working on that side on that one, I'm going to show you what this one looks like on the front, because we have multiples of these. But you can see right here the panels cut, so this is open for the water to run off of the eave. There's going to be a gutter here, and here's the headlamp. So anytime you have a wall transition, you're going to have this headlamp. So you can see right here where I'm sitting, because I'm trying not to zoom in my area, but you can see what this looks like where the valley terminates right here. You have your standard panels here. So here's our regular panel starting, valley termination, regular panels here. And this is a very hard detail to do it right. These will leak if you do not have a good roofer. I'm lucky that I have really good guys, and my guy Rafa is the best. So I'm lucky to have really great installers for this kind of detail, because I see this leak all the time, even on standing seam roofs, because the roofer doing it, the tech doing it, doesn't know how to tie these details in correctly. But you can see right here, basically our headlamp detail along the wall, built into the wall here. And we have in here, there's a Z-bar piece right here that's fastened into the top of the panel with a butyl tape, and then this piece comes over it. So all of this is basically sealed in completely with metal, and then the fascia comes over it, so that this is not going to leak. This is exactly what you want on this type of roof. That's why it's really important to make sure that you don't just hire the cheapest roofer. You actually need someone who knows what they're doing. Usually the cheapest people are not going to do stuff like this. They're going to cut corners and like just put a bunch of caulking and expanding foam and crap all over the place and hope it doesn't leak during their warranty period of like 5 years or whatever. So it's really important to make sure you hire the right team for your project. So right here is a good view again from the bottom of the valley, how it overhangs, how the panels wrap around the bullnose drip, how the tabs are bent in, and your 90-degree bends, your single lock on the seams with striated panels in Napa Champaign. And so here you can see that detail from the bottom, what that looks like, where the valley slopes down, and then you have your headlamp flashing against the end of the rake. So you can see all these pieces here, the bolt nose drip metal, then on top of that you have your regular panels, and then on top of that you have your Z-bar. The Z-bar is tucked in here. Then right here you have your wall flashing, and then right here you have your valley coming down the panel, and then right here you have your drip metal, and this is going to be a box rake, so the box rake is still going to be installed. But we don't want to box in the water coming down the end of the valley. So the box is going to start up here, because the last thing you want to do is run your box rake all the way down and then you're blocking all the water flow. So the box rake is going to start a little higher than the very tip of the valley here. And then of course on top of this, you're still going to get your valley clips and your panels running down and clipping into the valley. So there's a lot of layers of metal all layered in this little detail right here. So from above here, you can see the team, how this works. We have our rake on the gable. It's gonna run right here. And then basically the box is gonna stop right here where this notch is. And that allows for the water to run down the valley unimpeded and actually drain off the roof instead of getting stuck. Otherwise, if people are not thinking and they're just installing per the specs, you're gonna end your rake right here and you're blocking half of the valley. This water is gonna run right here along the nose and it's gonna get stuck and hit the end of the rake and it's not gonna drain properly. It's gonna make the metal go bad faster because water is just gonna sit there. If you get salt in that metal, it's gonna affect the paint and it's gonna affect the metal. So here's what the Z-bar looks like, and here's the butyl tape on the Z-bar. And this butyl tape is what makes sure that water is not gonna penetrate in between the Z-bar and the next metal. So you see the Z-bar, there's the back side, here's the front side. This is what you have on your wall flashings. And this is also the Z-bar is what's gonna go on the hips and ridges, but it just gets cut around the seams. So it gets tabbed out around the seams, the Z-bar. So here's what the Z-bar looks like, just holding it with the butyl tape on. And see, this bad boy is gonna go for the chimney. So you can see behind me, it's been a couple days since the last day I was here. We finished the panels on the front, the field panels, and have sealed in the gooseneck vents and also our jacks here on the roof to cover the bathroom plumbing vents. Now, the goosenecks you can see are mill finish. They did not give us the same color metal on the goosenecks because for this color panel they did not have any fabricated, and they're having issues right now getting some sheets in this color thanks to the tariffs. So they sent us instead paint to paint these with the similar paint to match the color of the panels. So thanks to the tariffs, we are already running into supply issues now, and they just began a couple weeks ago. The same thing here. We have not started back here at the chimney because we have some custom detail pieces that we're waiting to come in. And that's why it's kind of been a minute since we have done anything on the back side here, because we have to create a saddle here at the chimney. They were supposed to deliver these pieces first thing in the morning, and we got a email this morning saying, oh, they have issues, they didn't get the pieces in. So we're already running into supply issues on the tariffs, and it's only early April at this point. So they've only been in effect for a few weeks, but we're already running into supply issues now because now we don't have the sheets that we need to custom fabricate the chimney saddle here. So we are doing what we can by completing the hip and ridge metal over here. We cannot do the hip and ridge metal on this ridge yet because these panels on the back have not been installed, and we need to install the Z-bars first. So the Z-bars are going to go on the hips and ridges, and then the panels clip in, and then you can see right now the rivets are installed at the panels with caulking at the panel joints. So that's how the hip and ridge metal is installed. So looking down the ridge here, you see the panels done on one side, not the other yet. The Z-bar is going to come on the other side of these fasteners and be installed here. That's going to prevent water intrusion here. And the Z-bar install is all based on the spacing of the ridge cap metal, because the ridge cap is already prefabricated to a certain size. So the ridge cap metal is going to come on top and attach to the Z-bar on either side of the two panels, as you can see here, as completed. And you do the hips and the ridges the same way on the metal roof with this transition here at the hip to ridge being the key detail, where you have everything that seals in together. And again, here's the Z-bar. You can see it's not the easiest to get my phone under here because this is only about an inch of clearance for the Z-bar metal. And this Z-bar metal has a piece of butyl tape right here underneath that is going to prevent water from getting in between on the bottom side of the Z metal here. So there's that butyl tape that I showed you earlier in the video is on the underside. You can see the edge of the hip here at the end of the roof. I like to call this like the shark nose. It kind of looks like from above. It's like a doo-doo. You got your shark coming. But you can see all the bends and how the end of the metal has to bend around. You see this is even hemmed in right here. So this is hemmed inside. Here's our Z-bar. And then this comes around the edge of the bull nose, just like the panels do. So the panel comes around, and then this actually is coming around the edge of the panel, because you see there is a little panel right in here. So now this is wrapping around the edge of the panel on our little shark nose here at the corners of the roof where our hips terminate at the E. You can see here also the other end where you're meeting the valley, the way it terminates and curls around. It's kind of like the shark hip, and you're gonna wrap the end around the same clip that you're using on the valley. So this hems in around the valleys. It doesn't just terminate at the end, it curls inward. So you can see when you're placing the metal, you're going to mark on the panels where the Z-bars are going to go. So marking right on the notches here, the seams, so that they put the Z-bar in the correct spot. So that's what the Z-bar looks like. It's going to notch in between the panels, and you can see the marks. This is where you know the Z-bar is going to go, because that's where the hip terminates. So here's your ends of your hips, so you know where to install the Z-bar on each side of the panel, where the ridge metal is going to be centered. So you can see down below at our operating table, Rafa-san has to pre-cut all the Z-bar pieces to match in between the panels, because you can see that the Z-bar comes in 10-foot lengths right there. So you use one as a model, then to notch off of the others to fit in the spacing here between the panels, right in between the seams. So you have to come and cut each piece that's going to fit of the Z-bar at the top. See the cutting involved in these pieces. You have to notch. You see all of these are notched on the end, and then it's going to tab over. So they're notched so they can tab. And then this is the side that you see that is facing exterior. This is facing interior. And here's the butyl tape on the bottom that's going to stop water from getting underneath in between this and the panels once it's hooked under. And you can see that the way that the hip and ridge pieces are already cut. There is a hem right there. So the way this is going to fit in, the butyl tape is going to go on the bottom, and this is going to just lock in like this. So you see the tab is going to sit there. There's the line that they drew right here. You see matching on the line, tabbed out against the line, tabbed out against the line, so that these are straight for the entire ridge panel. The pancake screws. And as mentioned, you see these screws are going to be behind the Z metal. Then here's your exposed side, as I showed you, that's painted, so that you're gonna see the same color on the exposed side here. And then the ridge is going to clip here, and then it's going to clip onto the other side. Now on the other side, we're doing the same thing, following the lines for the ridge metal. Screws in each. And come back and caulk the sides of each seam. On the back side, so you don't see it. Then you can see, slide the ridge panel on down the line. To the end, and then the end is going to be closed off just like the other ends I showed you on the valley and on the hips. So it's going to come over and hem back around on the end. We have to install our rake metal here first though in order to close this off, but I'll show you what that looks like at the end. So it's another day, and guess what? We finally got the metal pieces we were waiting for. So you can see we are finally installing the panels on the back side of the roof because we were waiting for these transition plates. So I've showed this in another video before. The transition plate is almost like the valley clip, except it transitions into the flat roof. So you can see the transition plate, which is what we had to wait for to get these custom made in this color. You see the tip of the transition plate is the same champagne color. And the back side is white and sealed in like the valley clips. So you can see right here, here's our valley clip on our metal for the valley, and here's our transition plate for the transition into the flat roof. So under here, you saw in the videos, we still have our valley metal under the paper. And then on top of it, we're putting this transition plate piece where these panels are then gonna hook around like so. So you can see we have not tabbed the seams yet. You see how they're still sticking out? We haven't tabbed these in yet, so they're gonna get bent in. But right here, this is what the final finish looks like with the transition plate. I would say probably 60 or 70% of metal roofs that I see that have a flat roof attached, the contractor cheaped out and did not put this transition plate. If you do not put this transition plate, you will end up with roof leaks just like what was here before. Because if you remember, the homeowner did this flat roof only 5 years ago, and we had to do it all over again because even with the tile roof, they did not properly transition the sloped roof into the flat roof. This is the most vulnerable part of your flat roof when you have a transition. So you need to make sure you use the proper detail pieces like this transition plate to make sure you do not have leaks. Otherwise, you're gonna put this beautiful metal roof on, and then this flat roof is gonna always leak and it's gonna fail, and you're gonna be like, man, flat roofs suck. It's not the flat roof, it's the roofer. You have to hire the right roofer who's going to do the right details. Sometimes that costs more money to do things the right way. This piece was not free. I had to pay for this. So if you're going to do things the right way, sometimes that costs. Because a lot of people, most people down here are not doing things the right way. Transition plate detail. Here's the bottom, the underside of the transition plate. You can see there's the butyl tape on the bottom. So here's the back side of the clip, and here's the butyl tape. And this is what makes sure that you're not getting water infiltrating between the roofs, the flat roof and the metal roof. So here's the transition piece close up without me in the way as it extends into the valley clip here. So here's the valley clip exposed. Here's the valley clip covered by the panels. Here's the transition plate exposed. And then here's the transition plate covered by the panels. So this is actually really good. You can see finished here, unfinished here. That's the transition plate detail, valley clip, unfinished. And here is everything finished with the panels tied in. Then here you can see our panel clips going up the transition. Again, we're clipping this in place for now until the next panel comes in. And then you see our vents here that we still have to paint the gooseneck vents, but you can see the vent stacks themselves for the plumbing vents they had in the correct color. They just didn't have the goosenecks in the correct color, so we still have to paint these bad boys once we're done to match the panels. Okay, so I mentioned earlier in the video I was going to show you the rake details once they were installed. This is the box rake. There are two ways to do the rakes. You can do it box style like this, or you can do it where it's like a drip finish, just like our bullnose drip metal work. Basically, instead of having the box here, right on the edge where the water's not going to come off the roof, this is going to box everything in and everything's going to slope down. That's your box finish. The other finish would be to just have a drip metal so the water would actually run off of the rakes if it hits the rake. That is an easier detail to do than the box finish. You can see we put our Z-bar here all the way down. So we put this box rake on. I'm sliding myself down the roof right now. So you can see we put this box rake down all the way down, and it's got the Z-bar right here, just like on a ridge and a hip piece. And then you can see it comes and curls around. So this is your rake finish, your box rake finish. I'll show you now. You see, this is what it looks like from the bottom. It almost looks like a giant seam or a giant rib that comes down the box. And I'll show you what it looks like from the ground. The other way though would be to just put a drip metal finish on it so that it's not popping up out of the rake. Here's our vent jack installed and sealed with caulking. That's not a complete finish, but that's what it is looking like in progress. And here, you can see we actually have like a ridge to rake cap detail here boxed in. You can see he did a really good job with this box rake finish here. Wrapping all the way down and at the transition here. Just so you can see what that finish looks like. I actually like the box detail better. Some people like and think it's more sharp to just have it all terminate right off the roof. So it's kind of a matter of preference on if you want it to be boxy on the end like this, or if you want it to just be kind of flush and more modern, maybe. I like the box finish myself though. So you can see the panel, how it's tabbed in and pre-cut for the boot, for the pipes to stick right through. So behind me, we still have to fabricate the chimney cap. That's going to be the last thing. But you see here, we have our pipe. I just showed you what the panel is going to look like for the pipe and how the boot is going to go over it. I'm going to show you that install now. You can see the pipe. This is a bathroom plumbing pipe, and it's just a PVC and it's caulked. And then you can see here our base flashing for the chimney right here. As it wraps around, this is now complete for our cricket here of the chimney. You can see that big L metal that we put in there, and the way that we tied this in with valley clips, just like we do in the rest of the valley. So this is tied in with valley clips here. We left our plastic on because we've got caulking and stuff here, but we're gonna have to stucco back down over that now. And here's our panel that's going in. So I'm gonna show you that real quick. You see how it's fitted into the panel there. And the guys had to take measurements. And you see the panel needed to flip around here. And there we go. It's right on top. The panel's gonna come in now to the transition plate. And then get bent into place.
vale, entra más para acá.
So you can see that the panels, the field panels are all completed now except for this little spot right here. And we are working on finishing the ridges. We're hoping to finish today, but it might be tomorrow. But I'll fly the drone. You can see most of the roof is completed now. This is day 12 of the project. And I'm gonna show you this flashing here on the chimney. But I just first wanted to show you, as we're doing the gutters down here, I wanted to show you right here, the Z-bar between the panels, as previously shown. Another video with the sealant working all the way down for these ridge metals to come all the way down. So, day 13, roof is complete. You can see the details are all completed. Hips, ridges, valleys, our rakes, ridges on the top. We have spray painted the gooseneck vents behind me. Basically everything on this roof is now completed except for the chimney. The guys are coming this afternoon to finish the stucco on the bottom of the chimney here and paint the bottom with the PB70. And once that's completed, we're gonna put the cap on the top of the chimney. Besides that, everything on the roof itself is actually done. So just some chimney work, a little bit of cleaning up, and we're gonna be out of here. Now, if you enjoyed the install of this roof, then please, 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 please give us a follow. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and follow us on the social medias, Perkins Roofing. And also, please, if you need roofing work, give us a call. If you want your roof done the right way, give us a call in Miami-Dade, Broward, and the Keys at 305 MIA Roof. And for St. Lucie, for Palm Beach, for Stewart, give us a call at 561-559-ROOF. And for franchising, if you're interested in franchising, email at franchise@perkinsroofing.net. If you want your own business and you want to do metal roofs like this and learn how to do metal roofs and do these types of projects, impact windows, all the stuff that we do, franchise@perkinsroofing.net. And remember, we do more than just roofing. We do painting, doing kitchens, bathroom renos. That is Perkins Construction. Give us a call at those same numbers for Perkins Construction. If you want to do new structures, we could do pool cabanas for you, outdoor showers, basically anything. We'll handle Perkins Construction. And thanks for watching. See you next time in the next video.